Let's talk first of all about Rwanda. I'm asking this morning, actually, I'd love you to get in touch. Will the Rwanda flights actually carrying Channel migrants ever take off, I'm asking? And has the government got the right policy? Tell us why, if you think they have or if they think they haven't. You can tweet me at talkTV. You can also text the word talk to 87222. Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Yet more challenges coming. We've already had a bunch of the people who were supposed to be on these flights ain't going to be on these flights anyway. We're down to 31 people. Every single one of those has now launched a legal challenge. So the chance of this flight taking off with anyone other than some border officials and journalists on board is pretty darn minimal. Do you think this is the right policy, though?
It's tricky because actually, fundamentally, no, I disagree with sending them to Rwanda, but that's specifically about the country. I'm not necessarily opposed to offshoring people to sort of provide a reason for people not to turn up. But, Rwanda itself is not actually the nicest regime. I mean, over the weekend, there were more reports about how it's funding an insurgency in the neighbouring Congo. And you do just kind of have to think, well, fighting-age men being deported to a country like that, given what does happen in other parts of Africa with people who are press-ganged into service, I'm not sure that this is actually the best place to be sending people. But again, it must be tremendously frustrating. We have tried to come to grips with illegal immigration into this country for decades. We seem completely incapable.
You think we've tried to come to grips? Actually, governments have done absolutely.
Well, that's the point. Is that you have a Tory government that talks tough about it, but actually knows realistically that it kind of is in favour of having large amounts of migration because it props up employment figures.
Boris Johnson has been very clear when he was London mayor. And I think that actually one of the reasons he got elected is because actually he's very sort of social liberal. We know in many areas of his life, but is actually he wants an amnesty on illegal migrants who've been living here. I mean, these are not policies that would go down well with your average, not just Tory voter, average voter. The problem we've got here is that this policy is incredibly popular. People want this issue dealt with. The idea of tens of thousands, not even thousands, over the year, tens of thousands of young, healthy men from we know not where. They often don't even have passports and ID on them. But from yes, some of these are war-torn countries. Some of these people undoubtedly are fleeing horrors, but a lot of them are economic migrants. And again, the idea that it's a bunch of 18 and 20-year-old healthy men who are the most at risk and need to escape their countries, as opposed to the elderly, the infirm, the women, the children. I mean, come on, give me a break. You look at the boats, you know who's coming across. If you're able to pay 3, 4, 5 grand to a people smuggler, and that's just the Channel journey, they've had to pay. You ain't the most desperate, because people who are really desperate don't have that sort of money. So even allowing for the village club together to get one across. Well, I'm sorry. That's it's just a nonsense. And they're in France.
Yeah, well, that's the point I was going to make.
They're not desperate at that point.
I know we don't want to be in France,
have a right. Still. They can. I spent most of the last 2 years trying to get to sodding France.
I know.
So these people coming. So, but this is the thing. I completely understand, even under international legislation, that they're allowed to do this. Well, that's fine, but how many people are we going to take? And the people who are opposed to this, so that the wringing hand, bleeding heart liberals who say this is a terrible, terrible policy, they if you ask them what the alternatives, basically they think that we should open our borders to anyone who can get here.
Yes.
And they basically think that we shouldn't. They're the sort of citizens of nowhere people, aren't they? Global citizens.
When they say there need to be safe routes for people to come to apply, you ask them, what does that mean? And ultimately it boils down to, well, we don't believe in borders.
Anyone who wants to come here should come here. That's what they mean.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I'm quite happy to know that, the criminal justice system in this country is working for some people. It doesn't work for most people, but it turns out if you are applying for asylum, you will get any number of
opportunities. If you're burgled, doesn't work for you.
Exactly, but somebody's getting the full use of our justice system.
But this is the thing. I do think this. I mean, the argument is that this is a terribly racist policy, because this policy won't apply to Ukrainians, largely white, but it will apply to a lot of these people coming, Channel migrants, as we've seen the footage, largely black or brown skin. So it's a racist policy. Isn't a lot of this actually racist? Which is that actually the bleeding heart liberals and Islington lawyers are upset by this. They're upset at the fact that these people are being sent to an African country. Now, most of them have come from Africa, for goodness sake. But look, if we said, these people are going to be sent to Sweden to live. If we said, we're going to resettle thousands, or let's face it, it's only going to be a few hundred, if ever, these China migrants in Switzerland, they'd be perfectly happy with it, wouldn't they?
It's one of the reasons why I find it so odd that the fact that the Rwandan government specifically is not a very nice one isn't brought up more frequently. Because of all the sort of the governments in Africa, there are some that you would be happy to do business with, and others like Rwanda, which is funding an insurgency in the Congo, which is very bad towards its own people in terms of political dissent. This is perhaps not the one, but that's never the argument that's gone down, because then you might have to get into the nitty-gritty of, oh well, conflicts around the world are quite difficult, politics is quite difficult, and only white people can be colonialists, not the Rwandans, even though they're doing it in their neighbouring country. But that's kind of the point. It's not so much that this is a specifically bad regime, it's that this is in a part of the world that we don't think people should have to go to, even though it's a very beautiful country and it's a thriving young economy, it must be said. It wouldn't be the worst place in the world. If you wanted actually to get a job, there are plenty of jobs to be got in Rwanda. Not necessarily ones you want, but nonetheless, if you're that desperate, you'll find a roof over your head.
But this is the notion, is like how, when you're desperate, can you be, can you be choosy about where you get to go? And that is the reality.
Well, if you're choosy enough to want to leave France, then I suppose, yes, you can be very choosy about where you want to be. If it's that bad. Just if your situation is so uniquely bad that France is absolutely intolerable as a concept, Italy, absolutely not, Spain, wouldn't do it. But the UK, oh yeah, that's the one. But of course, this is an awful country. This is the worst country on earth.
But this is a fascinating thing. It's this idea, yes, but these countries take more than us. Yes, largely because they haven't got any choice, because they've got completely open internal borders under the Schengen area rules in the EU. But also, they're pretty much open borders on the eastern and on the Mediterranean coast. Well, that's their choice. I thought one of the reasons why we left the EU and we're never in the Schengen area was that we didn't have to, and we can make our own choices. And we are also a very overcrowded country as well.